Sponsored by the Dunleary Rattown Local Enterprise Office. You're listening to Business Eye on Dublin South FM.
And welcome, folks. Yes, Friday Business Eye. And today I feel great because, this week was the first time since December that I actually was out in the back garden without a coat, without a hat and gloves, and I could feel the warmth of the sun on my face. And I was saying, spring is here, spring is on its way. And then the next day I got my pick and I started digging up the back of the garden. And then I put my back out. There we go. Haven't done any exercise. But Simon, how are you? How's your week been?
It's been great. It's been great. Yeah, no, you're right. Monday, it just kind of went from winter to spring, and it's just great to see the blue sky and hear the birds as well in the evenings. And there's not yet a grand stretch in the evening, but there's a stretch in the evening, which is great. So it just everything feels a little bit lighter, and it feels a bit better. It's great.
The stretch in the evenings and the mornings, and that sort of gives us that energy as well. But since our last time when we jumped on, it sort of dawned on me that, we jump on these calls or we have Zoom calls with clients, and what happens is we get off it. And I think something psychologically in the background, I think you're gone off driving somewhere, you're going for a coffee, but we all sort of get out of this window and we're all still stuck in our little pods. And it sort of really hit me the other day. And I was going, what is this like, this driving force behind us? And I'm trying to find one good thing out of lockdown. And what for me, the one good thing is spending time with my kids. And that's the good thing on lockdown.
No, you're right. And, we did jigsaws back in the first lockdown, March, April. And I hadn't done a jigsaw since the early 80s. And, every day nearly I've gone for a long walk with my wife. I think since March, we've done about 30 marathons in terms of walking, which is just great, Wow. We wouldn't have done that if we were commuting and the old slog,
The only one thing as well, we're all doing the walking, but I think the mobility is an issue. That strength training still needs to be put in. We're walking, but, don't ask me to do any sit-ups or, and lift any weights. But I think that's one issue that living in lockdown is mobility. I sound real old saying that.
You do. We both do.
But in saying old, we've two very young, wonderful ladies with us today. We're going to be speaking about empowerment. We're going to be speaking about bullying. We're going to be speaking about lockdown. So it's going to be a very interesting show. And our first guest is Pauline. She is a life and professional coach, and she interests in change through empowerment. She focuses on helping individuals achieve their personal and aspiration goals. Pauline is passionate about empowering individuals to achieve outcomes important to them in their personal and professional life.
And our second guest is Dr. Angela Mazzone, and you're a postdoctoral researcher at the National Anti-Bullying Research and Resource Centre at Dublin City University. You're involved in a large-scale national study on workplace bullying, which is funded by the HSE. You completed your PhD in psychology, and you were a visiting researcher at several European universities. You've been involved in international research projects focused on bullying in various contexts. And this is really interesting. Your main areas of research have been workplace bullying, school bullying, bullying towards immigrant youth, peer relations, and socio-moral development. There's a lot of stuff there which I know we'll get into around workplace and school and immigrant youth. So welcome. It's great to see you both.
One of the things which really shocked me and when we were doing a research for this, that in 2014, we were the 7th worst country in Europe to do with bullying, and many companies as well, I found, which I'm shocked, are inefficiently equipped to do with the process of bullying in the organizations. What's your thoughts on where we are from 2014 up to now? And what are the stats on that, Angela?
ABC published a report in 2020 about the workplace bullying cases that were brought to the Workplace Relations Commission. And it seems that there is still lots of work to do. Because we found that most cases that were brought to the Workplace Relations Commission and were awarded belonged to organizations which did not have any procedures in place to tackle bullying and to address the bullying cases. So much needs to be done, but of course it's not all about policies and practices and procedures. It's about we need to change the culture in the organizations. Bullying is tolerated sometimes because, first of all, it's not recognized, it's not acknowledged, which means that people are not aware of bullying. And the reason why they are not aware of bullying is that bullying could take very subtle forms. So mostly workplace bullying is of a psychological nature. So people might use, employees or managers might use a language, for instance, which might be offensive, but might be highly tolerated within the organizations. And attitudes, behavior, language, which are negative, but might convey some subtle form of aggression. When they are tolerated, they are likely to favor bullying behavior.
It's interesting, Angela, because everything's about communication, and it's funny. I won't mention which one, but one of my two daughters has just started an internship, and she said yesterday that she felt like somebody was maybe paying more attention to somebody else rather than her, right? And you could, if you were in a certain frame of mind, say that was bullying, right? You could, if you were in that frame of mind. So how much of this is about unconscious behavior, communication, crossed wires of communication between people?
Yeah, first of all, social exclusion is widespread. It's one of the most common experiences in the workplace, as well as, among school children. And that's why people have to believe that the forms of aggression or bullying that are more harmful are those who convey an abusive language or like physical aggression among children. But in fact, social exclusion, being singled out, is extremely painful.
Yeah, I think it has changed from the 80s and 90s when we were in our early 20s and 30s, where it was normal to be abused by your manager because they believed fear was a motivational tool to get you to do your work. Pauline, you're speaking with a lot of people, and you specialize in dealing with people in their their mid-20s to mid-30s. What are you finding within that sort of network and that age group of people who within the workplace?
Yeah, actually, I was interested when I was reading the research that LinkedIn did. 63% of that group between 24 and 34 are reporting higher stress levels, working from home during the pandemic. But what I'm finding is that very often, just like Angela says, they don't recognize what's going on in the workplace as bullying, like some of the language that's being used or, what they've been asked to do. Whereas I, sitting on the other side of the table, say, well, that actually, is unacceptable behavior, whether it's from a boss or from a colleague. So certainly what I'm finding at the moment during this lockdown is that a lot of the bullying is coming from the top down. Where people are given really unrealistic deadlines, unrealistic targets. There's no recognition for the pressure that people are under in the home, where there's so many conflicting, challenges, whether it's the children, it's the work, it's, trying to get food and everything ready. So, and they don't feel that they can push back because, there's been so many laid off during this time. And they're fearful for their employment. So there's a lot of top-down bullying, I feel, going on at the moment. And what I find I'm advising them is that they have to stand up themselves, so I'm building their confidence so that they can push back and take more control over their workspace. So yeah, Joe, I'm finding a lot of it is from the top down. The other aspect that's coming in is this idea of not knowing what's going on, because we're all sitting at home. We don't have the same social structures that we would have if we were in the workplace, where you can find a lot, through what do you call that, the pipeline or whatever, what's going on. So there's this real feeling that's causing more pressure as well, is that I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's coming down the line. I'm not invited to all the meetings, so I am being excluded. And, there's a story then that goes on in the head. We build this up into something maybe it's not, or something that it is. So I guess that's what I'm seeing over the last year, Joe, is a lot of those things with that cohort.
I would agree, Simon.
Yeah, it seems, I think some of the research is suggesting something like 1.7 million days a year of missed off work as a result of bullying, which is costing the economy something like nearly €250 million a year. It's huge. And I used to work for US multinationals, and I remember there were lots, this was 20 years ago, there were loads of court cases in the States around people being excluded or ignored. That was a form of bullying. That was a lot of conversation 20 years ago. And back to Pauline's point, this must be very significant right now, because we're all remote and disconnected. Angela, without naming companies or even getting too much into sectors, are there sectors that are doing better in this space than others, or how can you break it down a little bit without naming names?
Yeah, so what we know from the international literature is that healthcare is one of the sectors where bullying has, where we register the highest rate of bullying. And together with healthcare, we also have education. And the thing is that when we think about bullying, in the education sector, we used to think about school children. So the bullying happens among children, but we also need to look at teachers, principals, board of management, because of course they contribute to build the school climate. So I believe actually that anti-bullying programs should be tackled, should be aimed to tackle both workplace bullying and school bullying in the education sector. So yeah, we should be using a combined approach to tackle both phenomena.
One of the biggest things as well is people not admitting, especially as we get older, that they are being bullied because, they're an adult, and this is something that only happens to children. Is there a case of those mind games that are being potentially used now, picking on individuals, ignoring them because they don't like them, and favoring other people within the organization?
Yeah, so as a researcher, I speak when I have the data, and I don't have any data about that. So I don't have any recent collected data about that. But what I can say is that the offline workplace environment might reflect the online workplace environment. So the dysfunctional relationships that we might have observed before in the offline workplace might now take place in the online environment. So I would not be surprised to see these kind of subtle behaviors by managers or even by co-workers now happening even in the circumstances of remote working.
What about gender? Is your research, and also back to you as well, Pauline, on the same point, is it pointing to more women are registering complaints, or is it more of an age thing? And who's, when the complaints are coming in, is it the male bosses? Is it the female bosses? How is it breaking down?
Yeah, so in the report that I mentioned before, that ABC published in November 2020, we found that most perpetrators were men, and most people who raised a complaint to the Workplace Relation Commissions were women. So it could be, also the international research shows that women are more likely to be bullied, but there are also, the research is not consistent in terms of gender differences. For instance, it has been shown that in works where female are predominant. For instance, in the healthcare, is predominantly female who work in this sector. Men are more likely to be bullied. So there is international evidence showing that. So the research is there are contrasting findings, but mostly women are likely to be bullied.
Yeah, and Pauline, what are your comments or observations on that whole gender issue?
Simon, I suppose what I'm thinking of is, we have the evidence in terms of the data, but I suppose what I'd be more concerned about is how many actually come forward and speak about their bullying experience. It takes a while to draw out individuals in terms of what's really going on in the background, in terms of their strategy to put it down to bullying or name it as bullying, whereas females would be, quicker to state, that I feel I'm being bullied at work. So I just think some of the data may be misleading in terms of how open and how easily people come forward. And I think, again, looking at the research, and again, I'm using this time of lockdown, but seeing that 90% of people are feeling higher stress levels, but only 10% are actually accessing resources like the employee assistance program. That's really worrying, because people are struggling out there, and I can see it in my work. People are coming to me, but there's lots of great companies who are providing, great supports for their employees, but the employees aren't accessing them. And that would concern me. Why aren't they accessing them? So, yeah, I'm seeing it more in females, definitely. But I work with more females. 30% of my business would be male. But certainly the females are seeing it, are quicker to name it. And one of the key instances that we were looking at last year and trying to bring something into the workplace is around females returning from maternity leave or returning from an illness, where they felt that, and this is the stories that go on in our head, they don't know whether it's bullying or, passive aggressive behavior that's going on, but because they've been out of the workplace for so long, they feel that they're being targeted, and feel that it's difficult to bring this up because it's obviously they're feeling it from their manager, and who can they go to? So definitely female, Simon, to your point, but I just wonder how many men are actually being bullied and how many are coming forward.
You're spot on there as well, Pauline, because if there's a certain amount and it's women who are speaking out, and it's always women, believe it, that who do actually speak out more than men, and that's to do with the male ego or pride. I've heard stories of people in their mid-50s who are suffering from major anxiety and fear because they're being bullied. There's a real undercurrent with lockdown, and I have bad days in lockdown. I really do. I'm a strong-willed person. I'm very jovial. I'm always smiling. But there is those moments that I just have to take a step back and go, if I'm not coping, what are people out there who might be just trapped in some sort of prison of fear? How are they coping within this on a daily basis? And that's the one thing that really shocks me and scares me, that what is going to be evolving within our whole work culture when we go into the 2022 on it.
Yeah. I agree with that, Joe. And when you think of it, and I've had personal experience, like I don't mind saying, as a former lawyer, I was bullied terribly at work, and I've also seen a young female lawyer terribly bullied at work in Australia as well. But when you think about it, bullies are fearful. The school bully was always the person with most fear. And I'm wondering, Angela, or maybe start with you, Angela, has there been much? All these bosses who are bullying or being perceived to be bullying, has there been much exploration as to what is it that's making them feel like it's okay to bully? Has there been much exploration in that space?
Yeah, bullying is clearly an abuse of power. So clearly those who have more power are more likely to bully others. So in many cases, managers are the perpetrators of bullying. And I think it would be important actually to provide a definition of bullying, because people might have a different understanding as compared to researchers. We define bullying as a systematic and repeated behavior, which is perpetrated by someone who has more power as compared to the target. So there is an imbalance of power there between the perpetrator and the target finds it difficult to stand up for themselves.
Is it sometimes that a manager who is bullying, but he is overwhelmed himself with the work that he has to do, and he's taking that frustration out on the people around him? Because we know that if you're, say, working on a project or you're trying to achieve something and you're getting interrupting, or there's other stressful things coming in, you can automatically, jump and let out a roar or whatever it may be. Is that a thing that there's so much pressure on these that they feel that they're a manager now and they have to do a really good job, that some of them then are taking this out on the staff?
Absolutely. I think it's very likely, but of course, bullying can't be justified. So this kind of behavior is conveying the message that managers need support as well. And we also need to raise awareness about bullying among managers, because they need to be aware of their own issues, or they might need support, and they might also need to speak up and ask for help when it's needed.
Absolutely, yeah. And I suppose what scares me sometimes, though, is, and this is real life experience that I'm seeing with my clients, is it's not just coming from the next level management, like it's coming from higher up in the organization. And so when that happens, the employee really feels that there's nowhere to turn, because going to HR is not working, because HR become under the remit of that manager. And I've seen this now in 3 organizations during lockdown. And really what's been said to the employee, well, if you don't like it, there's the door. So what's the comeback to that? I mean, that is a form of bullying, So yeah, I do think it's insecurity, it's workload, but also I work from a holistic point of view, like it's mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. And you can't leave the rest of your life at the door when you come into work. So there's a huge amount of pressure on relationships, a huge amount of pressure, with trying to school children at home. So like it's coming at everybody from all sides. So I think we have to be very aware of the pressures that are on people at the moment, and try and put supports in place that, supports the employee and supports the management as well during this time, because it's going to go on for another 9 months at least, I think.
It is indeed. And look, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Sponsored by the Dún Laoghaire Rathdown Local Enterprise Office. You're listening to Business Eye on Dublin South FM.
Yes, folks, and welcome back to Business Eye. Unfortunately, we just had a little bit of a technical difficulty, and we've after losing our 2 guests for today. But myself and Simon are going to continue on. Our apologies, and hopefully we can get their guests back again. If you want to reach out to them, you can actually find them online, and you'll see in the comments here in the show notes, there you'll have their details as well. So Simon, interesting part of the show. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, it's a huge area, and I think Angela, the research is really valuable, because, we all know about bullies. We've all met bullies, and there's a lot of conversation, and it's all heightened because we're online and remote and stress and stuff. But you do need to have some metrics and statistics to prove this. And it was also interesting listening to Pauline, that I thought she was going to talk about, most of the non-Irish feeling bullied, but then she said that, in the multinationals, it's the Irish who feel like it's the other way around, because, some of these overseas, workers coming in and, and they're getting the positions and stuff, that it's just a minefield. There's so many different nuances and different angles to this, Joe. It's just huge.
Like, is it a case, insecurity really is that what it boils down to?
I think there's insecurity, there's awareness, there's resilience, there's so many layers to this, and somebody's bully is somebody else's friend, it's so complicated.
Yeah, definitely. As every week talk about lockdown madness. With lockdown, we're talking about Born Irish. I believe there was someone mentioned on RTE that at Rosslare Port there was 22 trucks per day coming in from Amazon into the economy, and people are also noticing products that are no longer on our shelves as well. So big, huge organizations are the ones that seem to be profiting from lockdown, and the smaller companies here are suffering.
You're right. There's so many tensions, I mean, we keep hearing rightly buy Irish, and yet, you hear of those trucks coming in, and then Amazon is looking to build a fulfillment center in Ireland. And, if you weren't paranoid, you would think, are these big corporates in cahoots with governments? And, is this a way to suck money out of local communities? I'm not paranoid, but you do kind of wonder a little bit, what's going on.
Talking about the big tech companies as well, like Amazon, I see Facebook basically are censoring the information that's going into the people in Australia.
I saw that.
Mentioned, it was mentioned on Sky today. So
I know it's an interesting world. You just wonder. You do wonder where it's all going. We interviewed Raymond Hegarty a few weeks ago. The innovation IP guy. And, we had this conversation with him, and, and we were saying, is this all bad, or is this all negative? And I can't remember exactly what he was saying, but he was saying, they've almost got so powerful. It's almost getting to the point where it's going to be hard to stop them, Scary.
Pull the plug. Thinking about stopping and thinking about information, I know that the Health Advisory Board in Ireland, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, I believe sent a letter out to all the doctors not to speak out publicly about the decisions that they are introducing or being made. And I'm wondering, is that a form of bullying?
Well, it certainly sounds to me like a form of control, and if you work that through, I mean, control, when somebody controls somebody else, they have a reason to do that. And it tends to be fear, Joe.
Yeah. And it's fear. And it's also, what's coming down the track. I think people are starting to question a lot and, question everything. And I think more and more people, especially if you look about it over the last couple of weeks of the people that we've interviewed, and, all of them are saying, we're tired of this, and we're really tired of this. And I think that's the momentum that's happening out there within the workplace, that people are getting tired and people want to see changes rapidly.
I've seen a shift, and I've seen it in me as well. Like, I mean, you were saying this to me last year, wake up and question. And I was listening to you, Joe, and I was thinking, does he know something I don't know? But then the last month in me, I'm questioning more than I have for the last year. And so I wouldn't be the only one. So there is an awakening happening.
It's got me through life. And traveling through all the countries that I traveled through is watch yourself and have your wits about you always. Yeah.
No, you're right. I think that's key. Key.
Yeah. Simon, great show. Wish you all a happy and successful weekend. Get out of the office, or get out of the home, or out of the pod. The sun is shining. Enjoy life. There's more to life than work and emails. So until next week, from myself and Simon. Simon.
Thanks a lot. That was great. Thanks, Joe. Take care.
You're listening to Business Eye, sponsored by your local enterprise office in Dunleary Rathdown. Together, we're making it happen.